Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range. This is for Clementine and Otis. All right, so some shout-outs today to our major sponsor of the THT podcast, Indo Sol. They make rad sandals, full stop. That's it. They're just the best. They are literally all I've worn this summer. The soles are made from discarded motor vehicle tyres, so they just never die. They're an environmentally conscious company. They're B Corp certified. And if it's going into summer in your part of the world, get yourself a pair of Indosoles at indosole.com. That's INDOSOLE.com. And use code THT at checkout for a 15% discount. Also, a big shout out to WaveKey. WaveKey is the program designed by Brad Gerlach. It's a land-based systematic surf training method created by the legend himself. Now, Brad divulges his years of refined training and coaching practices to help you improve your surfing. It's that simple. WaveKey have offered THT listeners 10% off membership, so head over to wavekey.com, that's WAVEKI.com, and use code WAVEKEYTHT, all one word. And that's all uppercase as well, but there'll be a link to that in the show notes. All right, let's go.
I'm having a good time.
You are?
Yeah.
I can tell.
We are rolling too.
Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Today's guest is Jesse Faen. Jesse is a father, surfer, and former editor of Waves magazine in Australia and then Surfing magazine in the United States. After his stint in these roles, Jesse moved into the position of surfers representative on the ASP World Tour, which is now known as the World Surf League. For 1 year, he did that before transitioning into media director for the ASP, which allowed him to be part of what is described as the Dream Tour, traveling the world and surfing the best waves in the most exotic locations. Since then, Jesse has continued to work with the WSL, appearing as a commentator via online broadcasts and writing feature articles for the company. Jesse also is responsible for launching the clothing and apparel brand Insight in the United States, amongst other work he has done with the likes of major brands such as Quicksilver. Today, Jesse is with me live from his home in LA to share his journey, experiences, challenges, and hopes for the future. Jesse Faen, welcome.
Cheers, Shannon. Thanks for having me, mate.
Dude, I loved your Aussie accent. It spins me out.
I have such a mellow Aussie accent. When I'm in Australia, people think I'm American. When I'm here, they think I'm like true blue Aussie, and I'm just somewhere in the middle.
You really are. Like, how long have you lived abroad? So obviously you're from Australia, but how long have you lived, in the States?
I've lived outside of Australia longer than I've lived inside of Australia now. Like I was born in Queensland, but I grew up in San Francisco. I lived there for 7 years almost, and then we moved back to Australia, and I was there, and my family's never left since then, but I did all my school life in Australia, and then pretty much since then I've kind of gone back and forth and around the world, and this time I've been in LA for 16 years already.
Wow, man. So what's tying you to LA? Why are you in LA specifically right now?
Mainly my daughter, but also my job, and just this has become home. I mean, I've lived here, like I said, 16 years, and I've had a number of different jobs, and definitely have a community here that I feel completely at ease and at home at. But mainly my daughter. If she had been born in Australia, I'd be in Australia. If she was born in Chile, I might be in Chile. It's just she's my leader, so I'm following her.
Dude, yeah, and that's a fair lead to follow, bro. I get it. The Dream Tour. I mean, I described it as the Dream Tour. I don't know if it is described as the Dream Tour anymore, but it used to be called the ASP and they used to regard it as the dream tour. Can we just get straight into it? Like, what were those years of your life like in those roles as surfers representative and traveling around with that?
I mean, it was a dream, 100%. I got to travel to all the places that I had seen in the magazines and wanted to go, and then each year it became better and better because we started going to better locations, and that's why it was kind of termed the Dream Tour at that point when we started to go to like Chopu and Tahiti and Cloudbreak at Tavarua and Fiji, and the emphasis moved away from just going to the city beaches where the most people would be at the contest to the best waves at the best time of the year, so the best surfers could shine. I was very fortunate to be there before it was the Dream Tour, as it became the Dream Tour, and for many years during that kind of ideal time. So for me, it was just such a privilege. I mean, I grew up a surfer, just idolizing so many of the surfers around the world that I became really close with and got to travel the world with, and got to work with them, and also surf those waves. So for me, it 100% was a dream. It never felt like a job. It just felt like I was kind of the kid in the candy store that kept getting to like wake up and be in paradise and see my hero. So it was really cool.
Yeah. Like, can you describe your role as surfer representative? Like, what did that mean? Well, what were you doing?
Well, that was a new role. Like, I was editing Surfing Magazine, and Rochelle Ballard and Megan Abubu, two Hawaiian surfers on tour at the time that I was friends with, mentioned that the tour, or Rochelle was on she was in the committee of surfers that were like representing the surfers at that point. And they realized they needed to have somebody who wasn't a competitor on the tour to help be the voice for all the surfers, because again, this was at a time when the tour was not really a dream. Like, people were having to go away from where they lived in great waves to bad wave locations just because there was going to be crowds, and surfers were getting really over it. There was a lot of traveling, it just wasn't making sense, and there was lots of issues like that. And the surfers and the tour, a credit to the tour and Graham Stapleberg at the time, they realized that like we needed more input from the surfers, but it was hard to get that because it was very disjointed and everybody was their own little island on the tour, so to speak. So they were trying to just help get communication within the surfers, hear what their ideas were, and really filter a collective kind of idea from the surfers back to the organization, to the sponsors, and try to really start, just amending aspects of the tour so people would be more encouraged by it, so the media would be more interested in kind of supporting it, and the industry as well. So I was very fortunate to get an opportunity to get involved at a time when the tour wasn't really something everybody loved. It really wasn't back then. Like, I was working at the magazine, and the magazines would kind of talk shit on the tour all the time because the surfers were talking shit on it. And my role was to try and help those surfers realize they had a voice, to try to encourage them to use it, and to feed that back to the other kind of people involved. Like I said, I only did that role for a year because during that year, Jodie Holmes, or Jodie Young at the time, who was handling the media, she was pregnant, and she was a friend already, and I just was helping her do her job. She was in Hawaii, and I'd be like doing interviews and sending them to her so she could write press releases and handle aspects of the media. And the more I kept doing that, and then when she had her baby, it just became obvious she couldn't do the job anymore. And so they asked if I would morph into that position. And then soon after that, the world, like the surfers, kind of created their own little group, which kind of took over the role that I was doing anyway. So yeah, it just morphed naturally into me doing a different role and continuing to be involved for the next 7 years.
Awesome, man. I can imagine it would have had its challenges, like just going back to the surfers representative role. Did it become fairly politically driven? Like, what were you faced with at times, being like effectively a mediator?
I mean, a lot of egos for sure, but that was obvious going into it. I mean, you're dealing with like people literally chasing their dreams, competing for it. And so there was a lot of emotion. Like, obviously, you're in the middle of like a pressure cooker where everybody's like wanting to beat each other, even if it's in the love of surfing, they're still trying to beat each other. And like, their careers are at stake and world titles are at stake and money's at stake and sponsorship and all this stuff. So like I was in the middle of seeing a lot of that. But in the sense of difficulties, I mean, at first, maybe getting some trust of some of the people that like I was there to help, as far as from a surfer's point of view, because a lot of them, like I said, were just used to running their own show, and it was just trying to help them realize that they're part of something together, and trying to like have them communicate and get whatever their frustrations were heard. Not so they were just like complaining constantly to whoever would listen or to the media, but trying to figure out, well, how do we turn these kind of perspectives that you guys have that of what's not working into ways that we can change things.
Were they the conversations you were having with surfers regularly? Like, how
Yeah,
can
I
we
was
turn
trying to
this?
organize like a meeting at every event we would go to try to get the people to come together, and then I'd be like sending newsletters out to them just to try to get them up to speed on what everyone was saying collectively. I mean, that, like I said, that was a long time ago for one, but it was that was just 1 year of many years on tour. The rest of the time, I was handling the media, which meant again I was in the
Yeah.
middle of a lot
What
of
did
that
that mean?
emotion, but I was basically writing press releases every day, and we were creating the website, which and this is prior to the live webcasts, which are now there. So it was prior to that, then during that, and after that became really. One of the focal points in the surfing world, because we didn't have it prior. We'd be going to events, and maybe a month or two later you'd see a little article in a magazine about what happened at a contest, and nobody cared. It was just old news. Then it became this live gateway into like watching the best surfers in the best waves as it was happening, and it was a really special time to be a part of that and realize that we were creating history that everybody was seeing in real time. So we're sharing what we got to see with everyone. And like I remember like being out on a boat in Tabarua, or like Chopu and Tahiti, and realizing like the whole world has the chance to see this now, because it was just incredible to be there, but to realize others could also feel a part of it. And it was it was very obvious how special that was to be there, but to share it.
How did you find yourself gravitating? I mean, you told us how you got the job as media director. How did you find yourself getting into surf media before that, like with Waves magazine and Surfing magazine? How did those positions come about?
Andrew Kidman is someone I have to give a lot of credit to. He was the editor of Waves magazine when I was a kid, like when I was a teenager at North Narrabeen, where I grew up, and he also lived there, and I would surf with him. And when I was, I think, 15, we had work experience in high school, and I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. I just wanted to go surf, and I think I must have run into Andrew and just mentioned I had work experience and asked, like, would I be able to come to the magazine? Like, I had no idea what that meant. I had no aspirations to work at a magazine, but I think it was just, I figured maybe it was a good chance I'd get to surf during the week if I was hanging out with him. And and that's what happened. I did work experience with him, and that planted a seed, I'm sure, in his mind that I was somebody interested. And when I was with him, I did what he said. He had me do some work. We did surf for sure during that week. Um, but that was years before I started working there. But then what happened is I was traveling the world after I finished high school, not really sure what I was going to do with my life, but just knowing I wanted to see all these places in the world. And I remember being in Mundaka in Spain, and just woke up one day just to incredible surf, and I was so stoked. And I like, there was this long before emails or anything, and I bought a postcard, and I wrote a little postcard to Andrew Kidman, and just it was like like a shot of the wave at Mundaka, and I just wrote this little postcard. Never thought anything of it because I didn't have a return address. I was traveling, and anyway, when I got home and saw him again, I think that had just, yeah, made him think that here's a surfer who's got an interest in not only in like surfing culture, but in writing, because I'd written to him and he just asked if I was interested to get involved and do anything at the mag. But at that time I was at university. I'd like deferred for a year and I was studying psychology, and I just was 100% committed on doing what I was there to do. So I just was focused on that. But that definitely got in his mind. And then he reached out to me ultimately about a year later, because he was going to leave the magazine, and he basically just said, "Hey, I can put your name in the hat if you're interested to interview for the job." And I just didn't think anything of it and said, "Sure." And he was leaving to go make that movie Litmus that he made, which was an epic film. And ultimately I got called in, did an interview that led to more interviews. And before I knew it, like, they were offering this 20-year-old kid the position of editor. And I didn't even know if I should take it, but ultimately I did. And that led to everything that's followed.
Wow, bro. So, like, no experience in that realm. Like,
no experience whatsoever. The only experience was maybe 2 or 3 days about 5 years earlier that I had spent in his office. Maybe 2 days. I think we went to the office in the city. That was probably it.
Was writing something that always came naturally to you?
No, I definitely had kept a journal. I was reading a lot. I was interested, but even to this day, I wouldn't say writing comes easy or very well to me. But I just, ultimately, all it comes down to is, like, I was always passionate about surfing, and I just tried to speak truthfully about whatever I felt I could. I never considered myself a good writer. I mean, there's so many writers out there who just make me laugh and make me cry and make me think, like, how gifted they are with their, like, use of words. And I just try to be heartfelt. And ultimately I got, I guess I just was able to bring other people in. So there was other voices going into the magazine, and my job as the editor, I had to write more than I should have because we just didn't have much of a budget. But at the end of the day, the better issues that I helped put together, I was an editor, so I got to pull together lots of ingredients and pull it together into something. But the ingredients of great photographers and other better writers were definitely something that I knew was more important than me writing very much, because I don't consider myself a great writer. I consider myself lucky to have been in a position to help share my love of surfing. And I think that's all I really could do.
You think you're a good curator?
I think I pay attention to things, and I'm easily inspired, and I love to share whatever is making me feel stoked or motivated. And I don't know if I'm good, but I know that I love doing that. Like, I love connecting people to things which are positive. And I feel like if something moves me enough to want to share it with someone else, chances are it's going to have an equal impact on someone else. And I just try to keep a broad mind. I think editing a magazine, there's so many things coming at you, like so many photos coming in that, like, deserve attention. There's always trips happening. There's always, like, people with talent all over the world, not just at your local beach, but like the whole country, the whole world. So it was like just trying to, like, be open and ultimately have as many feelers out there as possible to help you figure out, like, what's cool and, like, relevant this month for this issue, and try to pull it together the best you could. But, like, I was 20 when I started, so I had no idea. And ultimately, like, I learned by being in the deep end and just tried to swim, and ultimately never thought I was good at it, but just somehow didn't get fired and kept getting new opportunities to keep doing it and learn a bit more and gain a bigger network of people that I could kind of, like, pull into the future issues. So amazing. Yeah, the more I did it, the more I realized I was confident that I could reach out to people and ask them, can you help me? Like, I want to make a good issue. I'd love you to be part of it. And most people want to be part of something like that.
Rad. Was there any surf journalists or writers that really stood out for you in that era? Or even now? Who are some surf journalists?
Yeah.
Because I've got one in mind I want to bring up. You might know him.
Yeah, I mean, back then, obviously, we were in the same office as Tracks magazine, so there was plenty of people that were pretty well respected that were writing for Tracks. I got to Paul Sargent. Sarge was like a very prominent writer, photographer, and even videographer with his Sarge's surfing scrapbooks. So like, got to read a lot of his stuff, and he was very good as far as what was going on the tour. And then like I said, I tried to keep a broad mind. So like, I had a friend in the US, Jamie Brissick, that I tried to get involved right at the beginning, and he started doing some stuff for me. There was a guy, Matt George, who's in Bali now, who was just larger than life. Like he was to me just that like writer that just captivated me with just he could paint a picture with his words, and I remember him saying, "Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story." And there was just like there was that sense of like larger than life storytelling that was always like just a pleasure to read, whether it was true or not, I don't know, but it was just, so there was lots of people. I mean, surfing and so many cultures are just full of characters, so finding people who can express that kind of whatever unique or extravagant aspect of that culture is just it's a cool thing to be able to, but like thinking about people today, like Adam Blakey, Vaughn Blakey is one of my like best friends, and like I always have loved his writing. I mean, he's definitely up there with my favorite people to read anything he writes. And I mean, there's so many, man. There's so many. I'm just inspired.
Yeah, there's a writer, Ben Mondi. I don't know if you know Ben Mondi.
Yeah, I know Ben.
For me personally, as just your average surf magazine reader, oh man, I loved his articles. I just loved the way he sees the world, and he really inspired me. Super intelligent guy. He seems to have. I haven't heard from him for a while, but I'd love to see something from him again. If you know anything.
I haven't read anything recent, but yeah, he was at Tracks for a long time while I was traveling on the tour. So I used to read a bunch of his stuff and see him around.
Yeah, and funny as well. Oof. I just want to go back now. Like, so you said you grew up in North Narrabeen?
Yeah, I moved there when I was 10.
From Queensland?
No, from San Francisco. We moved when I was 7 to Sydney, and we were living in Roseville, which is where my dad grew up. And then when just before or around the time I turned 10, we moved. My parents bought a house on the lake at Narrabeen, just a few blocks away from North Narrabeen. And that's when I got introduced to the surf culture that got its like hooks into me right away.
How would you describe those years of your life, first moving to Narrabeen and being captivated by that lifestyle and ocean?
Man, like it felt like just a new world opened up to me. Like I could walk to the beach, and I remember I just like love going to the beach and just feeling this energy. Like you could just feel the energy of the waves breaking and the vastness of the sea you could look out to, and just not be looking at houses and people, and just it just looked like freedom to me. Like it just looked like there's a place, like a big playground that I could just go play and be free and just have fun. Like, and then, yeah, like it's funny because like my parents weren't surfers, and somehow, I don't think I even asked for it, but my dad brought home a surfboard. He was working on a film, and he brought home a surfboard one day, this like, I don't know, 6 foot something blue single fin with a wood fin, brought it back to me like, yeah, you can go be a surfer. And I remember just feeling like really nervous but like super excited that like here was a whole new thing I could go try. And I'll never forget that first surf because thankfully my dad took some photos of it so I can literally put myself back in the images. But I remember paddling out and just being terrified, but I was out there by myself. There wasn't like coaches or anybody else around. My dad wasn't a surfer, so I just like somehow fumbled my way out through some whitewash, made it out the back. And I remember being out there and being so terrified because I was like, now what do I do? I don't know. I'm out here. But I'd already been like boogie boarding and like, so I love playing around in the whitewash, but this felt this felt different. Like this was like a big board that I knew could hurt me. And it just, I don't know, it just ignited some stoke in me that has never gone away. It really, it
Amazing.
had that effect straight away.
Like your childhood in general, you said you moved around a little bit sort of before you were 10. I mean, if you had to reflect on those early years from sort of 0 to 10, how do you reflect on your childhood? With good feelings or bad feelings?
We lived in San Francisco, so some of my early memories are being in that really urban city environment. We lived in a place called the Mission District, which was like the really poor Hispanic, like Mexican area of San Francisco. And like I remember, I've got early memories. Like my parents, I don't know what they were thinking, but like obviously it all played out okay. But they used to let me when I was like 5, like walk like 8 city blocks of a city through like a heavy area to go get a school bus and go to like preschool, like just walk by myself. And then I can remember like running those blocks home, like being terrified. Like, I don't know what I was
What?
scared of. Like nobody was after me, but like, I just remember feeling scared. Like it was very multiracial area, lots of bigger people all around me and me just feeling like very vulnerable.
Why were they letting you do that?
I mean, I think they were just hippies by nature and very open kinds of people and trusting and just figured that's what everyone was doing. I don't know. Nothing ever
Yeah.
happened. So like, it wasn't like they did anything wrong, but it was just, I just remember having those early memories of being in a big city and being a really little kid.
Amazing. Yeah, like, and you said your dad was a filmmaker or he worked on films?
He was a carpenter when we lived in San Francisco. My dad's just like a jack of all trades who can figure something out. And he left school when he was like, before he was 15 and just traveled. And then he was working as a carpenter in San Francisco. And then ultimately when I was 7, we went to Australia for, it was just meant to be a vacation, but he got offered a job working at the ABC as like a set builder through a friend that he knew that was working there. Took the job and then got involved in like that world. He was like working on television shows, became a special effects guy, and then ultimately became an art director. Like he's a really good artist, and he's been an art director in the film industry most of my life, like television and film.
Amazing. Oh, wow. How interesting.
I mean, he's working on Mad Max, what is it, 4 or 5? 5 now, right now.
Oh, they're making that, are they?
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. um, Going back then to, your time in Narrabeen, you went to school there. Were you a good student?
Yeah, I was. I've always been very driven. Whatever someone asked me to do, I just take that serious and try to do it. Once I got into surfing, I definitely was thinking more about surfing than I was about school. But I never like just what am I trying to say? Like I always did what I was asked to do at school. Like I always did my homework. I always prioritized that, and I did well. Like I got accepted to study psychology at university, but I wasn't ready to keep doing that. And I was, what happened to me is when I was in year 12, I broke my ankle surfing at Narrabeen, and that just stopped me in my tracks as far as thinking my whole life was just about surfing and competing, because I just couldn't surf for a while. And that was at a really pivotal time because it was just before my HSC, and I just started studying and started like getting into school and realizing, man, I got to have other stuff going on here. And so, yeah, I've always just had that drive to do kind of whatever comes my way, the best I can figure out how to. Never assume I'm good at anything, but I never have been lazy to not want to at least try to do it.
Wow. So you did have aspirations to pursue a surf career at one stage?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I was sponsored and competing and getting in the magazines and thinking I was on that path. Like, I grew up in Narrabeen, so there were so many good surfers, way better than me, always around me. So I never felt like I was like the top of any level in surfing, and I wasn't. But I I was surrounded with so many good surfers that I kind of got to ride on their coattails a bit, and it sparked my ability and it sparked my desire to be better. But and I've said this before to many people, like I never loved competing. I loved being at the contest. Like I loved being around the culture of surfing, and I loved getting to travel with surfing, and contests were a good excuse to do that. Like I'd go up and down the state to different contests and see a bunch of people I knew and get to meet a bunch of new people, and we'd get to share surfing. And I loved that. Like I knew that was something I wanted to stay a part of, but I never felt like I surfed well under pressure. It made me surf worse. And I just didn't enjoy that. It made me just have butterflies that I couldn't control, and it would control me. And I just freeze. So like, yeah, competing was never in my mind a very viable career option for down the track. For somehow, I got very fortunate that a different opportunity in the surfing world came my way, because I wasn't even looking for it, and it just came a knocking.
Wow, man. It's meant to be, right? Wow. So that first year out of high school, you said you got accepted to university. Did you actually go, or did you defer straight away?
I deferred, and I spent a year traveling around the world. So like I bought a one-way ticket out of Australia and went to Hawaii for 2 months, and then I went to California, and then I traveled up the West Coast, up into Canada. Then I went from there into Middle America, and I spent a few months traveling around the middle of the US. I just wanted to see different things. And then I went to Europe for 3 months and met up with some mates from school, and we bought a van in England and built a bed. And then we drove all around like England and went to Wales, went down to Spain and Portugal and France and Germany and Belgium and Holland. And we just went traveling on a crazy adventure.
At 19 years of age, approximately. Yep. Wow, man.
Yeah. Most of that year I was by myself, or just meeting up with different people. But the last couple of months, especially in Europe, I was with a couple of mates, and it was just epic. And then I deferred for a year. So when I got back to Sydney, I wasn't sure if I was coming back, but then as the year got towards the end, I was like, well, I know I can go do that. So it just seemed like the next step.
Dude, that's a bold thing to do at a young age. Like, so initially you left by yourself, and then you said you sort of got the offer at Waves magazine, and then Waves turned into an offer for Surfing Mag. Yep. Now, I want to know, like, how did the experience with Surfing Mag differ from Waves magazine?
Well, at Waves, it was a very little magazine with no budget and not virtually any staff besides an art director, myself, and a few like freelance writers and photographers. Surfing was totally different. Surfing had been around for decades. I walked into an office, and there's like a whole building for this one magazine, and like I had my own office, like that was the size of what our whole magazine stuff could have fit in just for me. And there was so much history too, like deep history, like walking in that building, I just felt it. Like it was just
more pressure.
Yeah, more pressure, but I don't think I felt pressure. I was so young. Like I moved there when I was 23. So I was still a kid, and I'm working surrounded with more people. I think the hardest thing for me was I went from being the one person making all the shots to realizing I was part of many people's opinions on what the right thing was, and having to fit into that team mentality as opposed to just like doing whatever the hell came into my head and running with it with no one ever questioning me. So it was, I think I learned a lot more. I had to learn about the advertising side of the business, which was a big part of it, which I never really dealt with in Australia, but in the US, the advertisers really had a vocal say in what went into the magazines, and there was just a lot more people with a lot more experience, and I got to learn, and I got to really grow my network, which was cool.
Why do you think these media companies wanted to take a gamble on a young person like that? Like, what was it? Because they seen an exceptional talent in you? But
no, definitely not. When it came to Waves, I mean, I had nothing to show for any sort of so-called talent.
Why are they taking a gamble?
I mean,
Cheap.
I'm
Okay.
young and accept whatever money they're offering, and easy to kind of, um, yeah, easy to shape in a way that suits their needs. Maybe, but also, look, I've always been a passionate person. So people ask me a question, I give them an answer, and without even trying, I guess I'm making them believe I know what I'm talking about because I care
I've
about it.
noticed. I've noticed.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't go into a situation trying to convince anyone of something, but it's like if I'm talking about my own experience, I'm proud to share it. And
Gotcha.
I think that some people aren't maybe as vocal or as confident in articulating whatever it is they have experienced. And for me, that's never been something I had to try to figure out how to do. It was just who I am. I just like, if I do something and I love it, everyone around me is going to know about it. And that's not necessarily always the right thing to do, but it's what I do.
Yeah, because it's funny because my next question was, how's that served you in your personal life? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know any other way, so I can't look at it like it's. I think I've always, one thing for sure, like I've had this said to me, like I wear my heart on my sleeve. So definitely, there's times when my emotion that gets overwhelming for me is exposed for others to see, and maybe that's more than they want to have to deal with, and rightly so. But I think at the same time, the things that have served me well in part of my life, whether it's brought up whatever other issues, it's like it's part of the package of my life's journey, and I don't know it to be different. So
Yeah.
I just know that I appreciate when I hear people being passionate about whatever it is that's going on in their life, and that's always inspired me and just basically given me guidance of how I want to live. So I
Yeah.
don't know. You'd have
Yeah.
to
I
ask
mean,
other people
yeah,
and how it's affected them.
but I've been told that before in my life, like, oh, you wear your heart on your sleeve, and I'm quite proud of that. I like it. But I've been reflecting on that saying a fair bit lately, and often wonder, does that mean that I'm someone that has an inability to manage their emotions? And how would you perceive that?
Well, I mean, we all manage our emotions in different ways, and I think that's the life journey. I mean, if trying to be at peace with it within our own skin and with whatever changing situations that we go through. And I don't know that anyone has a total handle on that. Like we might deal with some things really well, and then shit hits the fan, and we have to like dig deeper than what we had ever had to dug before. So like, I don't know. I just know that definitely certain things that I've gone through have helped me feel encouraged and safe to deal with things similar. But when new things happen, I don't know, like you got to sometimes dig deeper than you know. And at those times, that's when it all really is. That's the only judgment, so to speak, of how are you dealing with a heavier situation than you've had to deal with before. Because we've all gotten through plenty to be where we're at this moment, but who knows what's coming.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. Who knows what's coming? We don't, do we? Now, like after you, like I said, after your time at Surfing
Surfing.
Magazine, that Surfing Magazine, not Surfer Magazine, so it's a different mag. Was it straight into the ASP, or did you have a period there where you were just traveling? Nah. Okay, so you went to the
Straight into
ASP.
it. I was basically about to quit my job and just go travel. Like I was kind of feeling stuck living in San Clemente and looking at photos of surfers traveling all over the world every day as my job. And I just wanted to travel again. That year I spent traveling around the world was such a like incredible experience that never diminished that fire inside of me to travel more. And so when the possibility came with the ASP potentially creating a role and me being someone they were considering, I kind of was like, well, if I get this job, amazing. If I don't, I'm just going to leave and go travel again. I just felt like I
Yeah.
needed more life experience out there on the road. But
Because I know that you've
it came up and I got that job. So like I started getting paid to travel, which was amazing.
amazing. And so like once the work you were doing as media director ended, 6 or 7 years after that, what happened? What was next? What happened then? I know you've lived in South America for many years. So
Well,
what was your
no, I
next?
haven't lived there for many years. I built a house down there 20 odd years ago in Chile, and I was building
Wow.
that while I was traveling on the tour, and
Oh, okay.
ultimately I wanted to just stay there. Like I basically, after being on the tour a long time, I was down at my house in Chile, and my neighbor who passed away last year, I was with him when he turned 80. And at his 80th birthday, I remember just being there going, man, like I just want to be here with this guy and be in this place and stop being on this merry-go-round around the world. And that was really a change where I was like, okay, I'm gonna just change my life. I'm gonna come stay in this weird little remote place in Chile that somehow got my attention enough to build a house down here. And
Wow.
and I was about to do that, and then the company Insight in Sydney reached out to me and asked me like if I would come in and have a chat with them, and that led to them offering me the gig to launch the brand in the US. And so I was just about to move to Chile, and I ended up moving to LA instead.
Amazing. I love that brand too. I always used to get that brand. I love it. So was that an exciting time in your life? Was it good?
Yeah, it was a messy time in my life, but it was
Why?
it well, for lots of reasons. It was a total departure from the lifestyle I'd been living. Like I'd been traveling around the world surfing with surfers, and then suddenly I was living in Los Angeles and getting involved in like retail sales and dealing with the fashion world, dealing with skate culture, which was the first time I'd really got involved in anything connected to that, and just being at trade shows and doing a whole bunch of stuff which was totally foreign to me. Like I'd lived a decade of my life basically on the beach, and suddenly I was like in offices and warehouses and dealing with all this stuff that I just had no experience of. And there was a lot of parties, and it was it just became like a messy like blur of just lots of different things, all new and lots of fun and lots of amazing people. But it was it definitely it was like I think at the time traveling on the tour, such a like just light, fun surf adventure. And then this was like grittier. This was like I was yeah, it was more like a lot more concrete around me than sand.
Yeah.
Just like a different chapter, but it was lots of fun and got to meet heaps of people that were great. But there was just, yeah, it was a different kind of partying. It was like not partying because a contest had just finished and we're in this idyllic location and someone's just won a big surfing event and we've all had great waves. It was just like partying because it was like, I don't know, for whatever
Well,
reason.
but was it also a business sort of thing as well, like PR?
Oh yeah,
You
for
know,
sure. Yeah,
yeah.
like
So
a big
schmoozing
part of
and
my job was I was the face of this company, so I had to like we would put on events, and I had to go to every event, and I took it on like that was like my job, like to be at all the to be seen and to like build relationships and to collaborate with people and yeah, and that it was fun. It was a lot of fun, but it was tiring also because it was like I had a day job too, but my night job was like pretty significant to the role I thought I was there to do.
yeah. When did the like? Actually, I got a side question. Were you responsible for sponsoring Jamie Thomas, the skateboarder?
No,
Because I know he's the.
Jamie and Black Box Distribution
Uh-huh.
basically reached out to for Jamie to be sponsored, but ultimately for them to
Sick.
take over the distribution of the company in the
Ah,
US. So when Jamie and Black Box got involved with Insight, that was just before I left. Like I basically
gotcha.
was there through the transition of that going from us running it and being an extension of the Australian company to Black Box Distribution and Jamie being the distribution hub of Insight for the US.
And so why is that why it came to an end? Your time with Insight specifically because of that, or what brought it
It
to an
was a
end for
number
you?
of factors. That was definitely one of the main ones because I was more of a like my role at that point was way less serious. Like they had the back end aspect of distribution, and they had just a lot of changes happen. A lot of people that I'd worked with were leaving. Their like headquarters was like 2 hours away from where I lived in LA. So it was, I made the commute every once in a while, but it was just an obvious, the tide was turning, and it was a different time. And Jamie, credit to him, was super passionate and brought a whole bunch of credibility within the skate world, but it didn't feel like the same company that I had grown up with. I didn't see it heading in the same direction, and ultimately, I think I also had, I just had a baby, so like I was just in a different place. So
yeah. So, because I always really identified with that brand. I really like their stuff, and as a bit of as a skateboarder myself, like when I seen Jamie Thomas was involved, it really actually made me like the brand more. But I can see where you're coming from in terms of the feelings and the directions that you wanted for it. Would you consider your time though with Insight as like a really successful career time for you? Like, do you feel proud of the work you did for Insight in that time?
Oh, 100%. Insight felt like a baby. It was my first child. Like I got to bring this little thing which I cared about already from Australia that I had nothing to do with, and nurture it as like this little kind of idea I got to plant in a lot of people's heads and watch it grow and turn into something, to the point where, like you're saying, someone like Jamie Thomas, who's a legend in skateboarding, was wanting to be part of it. And like this was a brand that no one knew about. When I got off the plane in LA in 2005, and I would go talk to people who had never heard of the brand. So I just like, all I did was talk story and let them know that this was something I cared about, that we were going to make relevant to them. And we did. And a whole team of people to thank for that. But yeah, Insight was it was a huge chapter in my life. It was actually, instead of me being behind the scenes, I was really in the kind of driver's seat for a while, which like had its downfalls in some aspects of like definitely inflated my ego more than it needed to be inflated, because I got a lot of attention for something that I knew I wasn't responsible for the whole thing. Like it was a huge team effort and a lot of credit to other people, but I got a lot of the credit for it because I was the person associated with the brand. Which is never just one person, but for me especially, like I wasn't designing the clothes. I wasn't the key person on so many of the pivotal things that made that brand what it was. I was just a huge fan of the brand, and I got to share that passion I had with it with a lot of other people and make that spread.
Is it still around? I don't even know.
I believe it's still around in Australia. General Pants, I believe, own it and do really well with it. Out of their stores. I don't know. All the people who created the brand left, and myself included. But yeah, it was such a special time. It was a very, had I not done that, I wouldn't probably be in the US this long either. Like that really, it was like 6 years of my life running something that, and I shouldn't even say running. I was just like, I was in a figurehead position, but I got to be involved with a lot of amazing people and just witness something special. Like in the US especially, it was something very small compared to other brands, but it was really special and it was loved by a lot of people, and that was something I was really proud of to be a part of.
Dude, amazing. Yeah, it's really cool, man. And I want to just now go into like after that. So what was life like after post Insight?
Well, it got pretty confusing because, like I said, I had a kid, and then the recession hit, and things were just tough in the US, and for where our brand was at. And then I ended up leaving to work for Quicksilver on this project that they were doing with Kelly Slater called VSTR, and that was a really hard decision to make. It was a really hard decision to make as far as leaving, like I said, Insight, which felt like my baby, and starting to work for other people. But more importantly, it was a time of just was going through a lot of personal struggles, like in the relationship I was in with my daughter's mother, and I were just like, we just weren't handling the situation of being young parents as well as we could have. We didn't have the support necessarily that would have helped us or helped me at the time. And I think another huge contributing factor that I was aware of, but maybe couldn't articulate or know what to do with at the time, was I was pretty burnt out. Like I had worked 20 years without a break, and all of my jobs were the kind of things I would have paid to do, but I got paid to do them. But it was like, I'd just been burning the candle at both ends. Like I'd been working nonstop. I've always worked really hard at anything that's been given to me to do, but I partied nonstop too. And like, that just takes a toll. Like I'm sure I lost a few years of my life just in not sleeping during that time. And like, so I think it all just came to a head. And like having a young kid, as you know, is like really demanding. And I was struggling with the idea of how to go to my job, whatever that job was, and still do this new job that I knew was supposed to be more important, but it hadn't shifted inside of me to be more important yet. I was in that like limbo of like still being in my ego and my thought of what I need to do for a job to get money and to like provide and all that. But then I was like, well, then how do I actually be present and get to enjoy being a dad? And I was really struggling with that. And so it was a turning point at that time in my life for sure.
Yeah. See, I think a lot of dudes struggle with that conundrum of like, oh, I want to provide, I want to be the provider and provide for my new family. But I guess the paradox is that also takes you away from your family and you're not as available. Yeah. And I mean, so you don't feel like you manage that well?
I did the best I knew how. And I'm fortunate, like my mother is a therapist and I've always had a very close open relationship with her and felt safe to tell her what I'm going through and try to get guidance. But I could just tell I was like my fuse was getting shorter and shorter. And I was just like the littlest things where I was starting to just snap and I was starting to just know I couldn't handle things the way that I wished I could. Like I didn't want to create a problem for myself or anyone around me, but I could see I was, and I didn't. And I was, like I said, I was at parties all the time. I was drinking. I was doing other stuff that was coming my way all the time. And it was getting hard for me to have clarity of what I was doing that was adding to the problem or helping. I like that line was blurry.
Like if you don't mind me asking, like what did burnout look like for you though when you sort of hit that moment of like, I'm exhausted, I can't do this? I mean, for some people it's a nervous breakdown.
I think for me it was like I've always been so passionate about anything I do, and I just remember feeling like I didn't care as much. Like I wasn't that eager to get out of bed and go to wherever. Like if I had an appointment, I remember feeling like it was like a struggle to have to go to this meeting or even show up at this party or even go see these like events, like whatever it was. It just started feeling like I was just getting a little bored and I was not feeling inspired by it all. Like not always. It was like, there was definitely, I lived a very fortunate career. So even towards the end there, I was still getting to do these amazing things and be around these super inspiring people. But it was just feeling like a little bit more effort to have the same sort of enthusiasm that I'd always had. And I was just tired. I think I just really wanted some time off, but I didn't know how to do that.
Yeah. Interesting. So interesting. I think people struggle to see the signs of burnout. I mean, I know I do as well, because you just sort of go, I've just got to keep going. And then you push and you push and you push yourself to a point where it just starts to manifest itself without you even knowing, like you said, the exhaustion, the tiredness, the snapping at people. And next thing you know, the damage, you start to cause damage, and then it's like a snowball effect, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard when you have good opportunities coming your way to say no. Sometimes it's like, it's really hard to say, no, I don't want to do that.
Do you struggle to say no? Why?
Well, I think I got better learning to how to have some like boundaries and how to balance things. Because for the longest time, I would just be go, 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 and not have a clue how to slow down. And And I think surfing's always been a very great balancing element in my life because obviously you get away from your phone and your computer and you get away from people and you're doing something healthy. So it tires you out physically. So like it all helps. But obviously if you're partying through the night until the sun comes up and doing that every week, like, yeah, you're losing a bunch of time that you would have been doing something healthier that would have balanced you naturally anyway. So I think the scales just started shifting where there was a bit more partying going on than there was like the healthier things in my life that had always been my foundation. So, and I could see it, and it wasn't like I pushed it too far, but it was obvious I was pushing it enough to see some effects of that I didn't like and that I didn't want, but I was getting in patterns that I didn't know how to suddenly change. Like I was just becoming what I did and the environment that I was in. Like, again, I live in LA. It's not like I have the best surf just begging me to be there and be stoked. I'm like, the waves are pretty much always below standard. So you're just like, man, I'll go out tonight and get drunk and see where this night goes, because it's like, I wasn't waking up before the sun came up hoping to surf great waves.
Yeah, interesting.
But that's an excuse. I mean, at the end of the day, I just was prioritizing things that, like at the time, seemed like the right path to be on. But I realized I was off the track of what was healthier and better for me.
Do you feel like you're on that track now?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, about 7.5 years ago, I was down at my house in Chile, and I just had like that moment of clarity where I just saw I was not heading in the path or the direction that was making me happy, and because I was miserable. And it was enough of a wake-up call for me to realize, okay, you've got to make some adjustments here, and you've got to let go of some things that are getting in the way of you doing the things that would make you happier, at least right now, and see where that takes you. And immediately I started just getting positive reinforcement that, okay, you're back on a better track, and getting surrounded with better like influences and hearing things that are inspiring me. And I started just like, it was like I just woke up from my life nap or something and started realizing it's just some things that I'd known before, but I'd just kind of forgotten about, and like prioritizing more positive behavior and more positive discussions and more positive people. And ultimately just started walking forward, I think with my head just able to lift itself up a little higher again, instead of like just being down on myself, because I felt like I'd blown a bunch of stuff. And and ultimately, I really started prioritizing my time in the water again. That was a huge thing.
Nice.
Like I just started going, I'm going surfing. Like, I don't know what else was going to happen, but I'm going to go surfing. And I just started trusting, I just started trusting that foundation that had always served me well.
Yeah. Now, and it's funny, I hear that a lot when I speak to surfers. They find that it just becomes this grounding place for them when life starts to feel like it's getting haywire. And I also think primarily that is a lot of the fact that when you are in the ocean, you know, no one can call you, you can't look at your phone, you can't look at your laptop, even just at the base level. It gives you that little bit of, I guess, a buffer from the real world for a while, and makes you go. And when you're sitting out the back of a lineup, you've got nowhere to hide from your thoughts, really. I mean, you're thinking about the ocean, but you're sort of with yourself again. So, yeah. But listen, man, it's been epic. It's been like an hour, and I just never ceases to amaze me how fast time goes. But I just want to ask you one more question in terms of, like, if you could go back, all right, to 20-year-old Jesse, what would you say to him?
Man, well, at 20, I was just about to start editing, like I said, Waves magazine, and begin a career that is literally, that was 26 years ago, almost 27 years ago. I mean, I had no idea how things were going to play out. I said yes, and I was smiling a lot. And my only advice would be kind of to do the exact same thing. Say yes and smile a lot, because I was happy, and the world just kind of kept giving me positive things in return. But yeah, honestly, I wouldn't change anything from what I did back then. It was just if anything, just slow it down a little bit and not be on such a chase for the next thing. Like, appreciate those moments a little bit more while you're in them.
Is that what you do now in life? Have you slowed down?
Yeah, for sure. It's super important for me now to take stock of where I am every day. Like, I'm not striving to get something else. I'm definitely not. Like, for the longest time, and it was not even because I needed material validation, but I was just always wanting to prove to myself that, okay, you can do this job and get this money and maybe buy this place and go to this country. Like, there was just some sense of like I needed to prove I was worthwhile and could do these things. But before I knew it, I was always kind of on this, like, I was always, in a sense, chasing something ahead of me and like looking at a deadline, looking at this thing that I had to do. And so I was living in the future, trying to get to that place. And when I'd get there, it would just start again on something else. And now I'm just like, you know what? I don't know or care what's coming down the line. Like, I'm here today. I want to enjoy this day. I want to share this day with my daughter and whoever I get to spend time with. And I'm really grateful today that I have that shift in perspective where it's not about needing more. It's about needing to appreciate what I have more. And it's a total shift. I mean, that shift for me is, I haven't tried to amass anything in years. I'm trying to just give away more or enjoy what I have more and just live a simpler life because it's always where I get more joy.
Yeah. Just live a simpler life because it's where you get more joy. That's a great message, man. I love that, dude. So thanks. Listen, man, I ask all guests to come to the podcast with a cause that they want to support or advocate for. So have you got anything you'd like to share with us today in regards to that?
Yeah, Waves for Water and John Rose are dear to my heart because at a time when I was going through some heavy times, John reached out and ultimately took me down to Haiti and then down to the Dominican Republic. And I got to just see what they have done in places of disaster and really bring clean water to people dying because of not having it. So that's for sure. And it's close to the surfers' culture. Like, John's an amazing surfer and just created this organization which is on the back of going surfing to the places you want, but just giving back to these communities and however you can. So yeah, Waves for Water for sure. And then, like my mate Lion also comes to mind just because he's a surfer and a dear friend of mine here in LA who's been battling cancer, and he's just such an inspiration. And I can't fathom what he goes through because he's this, especially this last year, he feels like it seems like he's been in hospital the whole year, and it breaks my heart. But he's, I'm sure the financial burden of that in this country is real, and the stress for his family and loved ones is real. So yeah, people going through hard times, man, it seems like we should be able to balance the books, and some people have so much and others have so little.
Dude, that's amazing, and thank you for raising those. And I'll with your friend Lion, he has a GoFundMe, I believe. So
yeah,
I'll put a link to Waves for Water and the GoFundMe in Jesse's show notes. You can find this episode on a variety of different platforms to what you're listening to now. You can go to terriblehappytalks.com. And there's also links to other platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Buzzsprout, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and whatever platform works best for your device. It always helps if you hit the subscribe button and leave a review. But if you don't, that's cool too. You're definitely worth the effort. Now listen, Jesse, man, I got a gift for you. I got two gifts for you, actually. The first one is from our sponsors, Indosol. They're going to send you a pair of flip-flops or slides and made from repurposed motor vehicle tires as just a thank you for being on the show. They do that for all guests.
Epic.
So thanks, Indosol. And I believe that we have, the Australian distributor, Nick Riley, who
I love him.
He's been super supportive, so big shout out to Nick. Thanks for being
he's family, man. I love the guy.
Is he? Nice. Yeah, he's a legend, and super grateful for the support he gives us, and also to the other founders of the brand as well, who are Kyle Parsons in San Francisco. And the other one is a sticker, dude, which I'll have to send that to you. I give all guests a THT sticker, and I've only, it's only for alumni, so you'll be episode 97. So thanks so much, Jesse, for being on the show, brother.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Anyway, man, is there anything you want to end on, man? Is there anything profound or any message you want to put out into the world?
Just
put a lot of good shit out there. Just be a good person.
Do your best. That's every day.
Dude, mate, thank you. And you are a good person. I can feel it. All right, man. All right, see you. Have a great day in LA.